All right, let's go ahead and pray, and then it's just a did you read quiz, so if that's not circulating, okay, no, let's pray. Lord, we ask that you'd help us as we tie up our semester and finish up the Constitution and think about our final. Help us to prepare well for the final and do well on Friday. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Whew. Friday! Isn't that exciting? Okay. We got a paper starting someplace? Or a couple or three? All right, questions, comments?
We're done.
Thank you. I am just as excited about being done with you. So. Feelings mutual. I don't know that I'll get it done Friday, but definitely Monday I'm given the final for American history. And before I give that final, I want to be done with yours. And before Monday's over, I want to be done with American history. And then I'll have 3 finals for my Universal History class. And that's it. Which got moved till Thursday. Did you see that? Wow. I'm going to give you guys a chance to do that early if you want.
Make it really short. It's not my fault.
Oh, you don't know the temptation. We could do a all or nothing, true or false. Just one question.
What you need to do is the little bubbles like the SAT and put it on the sheet.
Oh, yes. So, what am I saying? Oh, I'm excited too, Megan. Christmas is coming. By a week from today, I hope to be down to, at most, those 3 papers. Yes, I did, right here. Spent a lot of time working on it. It's handcrafted. So
hey, that's a gift. We have a choice not to accept it.
no. Well, I mean, you could. I mean, you don't have to write. You could give me a gift by just leaving it blank. I mean, I think of how easy that becomes for me.
You can accidentally put 100.
All right, we do have some material to cover today. I wanted to go back and retouch on the Second Amendment. Somebody tell me something of importance about the Second Amendment. It's second. We have that, but something.
Shouldn't be infringed upon.
Okay.
Shouldn't be altered or changed or messed with in any way.
Okay. By who?
By anybody.
Anybody, any level of government. It doesn't specify Congress. Just wherever. Shouldn't be infringed upon. Okay. Michelle Obama is protected by the Second Amendment. She wears all those sleeveless dresses to show off her pipes. She's got them too. All right. I wouldn't mess with her either if I was married to her. I mean, that's all right. Who is given this right to keep and bear arms? It does include Michelle Obama, but it includes more than her. People. It's an individual right. So, and I talked about the purpose of this. Anybody remember what the purpose is? Just so that we can go hunting, or to make sure we are able to compete in the Olympics and the shooting events, or
So people can protect themselves and their families from bad people.
Yes. From the government, okay? God. I know you probably this came to your mind since you read it, but from our textbook. This is paragraph 451. Talking about the idea that the Second Amendment is there to allow us to successfully fight against the government. The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms had justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of the Republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the usurpations and arbitrary powers of the rulers, and it will in general, even if these are successful in the first instance, enable the people to resist and triumph over them. All right, so here Story recognizing that part of, or the heart of the Second Amendment is to allow us to successfully resist a runaway government, even to the point of armed conflict. So it's not for hunting. All those are the kind of like side benefits that is at the heart of it. So anyway, I just reminded that, and we talked about it, so I thought I would read it. All right, questions let me ask you questions. tell me the historical purpose of a warrant. Not the way we view it today, historically. Megan, since you're so excited.
You can go to somebody's house and check things out.
That's a search warrant, yeah.
Is that like a warrant?
Yeah, it's like one, yeah. Did everybody see this? Okay. That's more the modern interpretation of it. So we have a liberal in our classroom. You going to vote for Hillary?
I was going to say, what, you got your laptop for 60 days.
It's a warrant.
A warranty.
I wasn't here for what amendment.
That's in 4.
This is 4, okay.
Yeah. We have ingrained in our mind today that the police are not allowed to search without a search warrant. They're not allowed into your house. And you should take advantage of that modern interpretation if you ever have need for it. But that is really not historically the purpose for a search warrant.
It's like protect the officer legally.
Yeah, it gave the police officer legal protection. He was allowed to search. He couldn't do it unreasonably, the Constitution says. But he was allowed to search without a search warrant. If he went through the trouble of getting a search warrant, then it gave him legal protection. If you drug him off to court and said, oh, this is unreasonable, then the judge would say, no, we already looked at it, this is very reasonable. Gave him, it kind of was like pre-deciding beforehand what the legal proceeding would determine at the end. So it gave him legal cover. Again, if they come and they say, we've heard you've been abusing your children, use it. All right, say, where's your search warrant and get off my property? No, you can't look at anything. Use it. But historically, that was not the intent. That was more a creation of our court system in recent times. All right, Amendment 5. What's the most famous part of Amendment 5? Someone said something. Going to go again?
There was something about look at that.
Yes. What does that mean? Is that one of Beethoven's symphonies?
Josh is going to answer that one.
Jacob? Oh, I thought you were going to answer. We'll let other people participate. This is not a, yeah.
You can't be forced to testify against yourself.
Yeah, you can't be forced to testify against yourself. All right. There are other things in there. The grand jury. Where are we at here? Double jeopardy. So when you're on jeopardy, you can, as soon as you get the double jeopardy, say, oh, wait a second, this is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. So, what does double jeopardy mean?
Where they can't be tried for the same crime.
Yeah, can't be tried twice for the same offense. Again, the idea of the police can't just keep trying you until they find a jury that will convict you. Once the jury says you're innocent, that's the end of it. And there is obviously some room here if situations change or new evidence comes to mind or that type of thing, but they just can't keep rehashing it. So, double jeopardy. What is eminent domain? That sounds like some computer term. We have Mr. Porzinski always says, should I put your laptop on the domain? Eminent domain? Is that? These guys are really ahead of their time. So.
Saying that government can take your property for public use.
Okay, the government can take your property for public use with just compensation, right? They have that power. They can take it. They just have to compensate you fairly. So, and again, you can find examples where people claim that they were very unfair and unjust, and I'm sure there are some. But for the most part, at least any ones I've really been familiar with, they offer a very fair price. Mostly because they want to buy the property and get on with the project. They don't want to fight this in the court for years to save $10,000. They'd rather just pay you a little bit extra and be done with it. So, but anyway, that is a constitutional issue. All right, I think we started into Amendment 6. Yeah, we did. We talked about the speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. All right. Why do we have it in that state and district where the crime was committed? Why does a jury have to come there?
They're more familiar with the case.
Okay, more familiar with the case and more familiar with the culture and the atmosphere. They're supposed to be your peers, you know. Imagine the difficulty of dragging us off to, I don't know, Japan or something, you know, and us be the jury. We wouldn't understand the culture, we wouldn't understand things. Right? It's supposed to be a jury of your peers, so it's got to come from the local area. All right, there's some other things here in this amendment that we need to talk about beyond that speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. That phrase we did not finish last time, it says, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law. Okay, again, you have to really be evil and wicked to understand why you would have to say previously ascertained by law. Right, why not just say, which district shall have been ascertained by law? Sarah's on trial. Congress says, all right, let's draw this district. And they put a little pocket around her house and then this little skinny line out to California. And they do it after the fact. All right? I mean, it's the same. Whatever the district was before, that's what it is. You can't change the district and say, oh, look, we're following the Constitution. All right? So again, if you're thinking, I would never think of that, you're too innocent. Oh, you're saying you would think you would have thought of that. Okay, so some of this wording, you have to really think why. You have to think of how this could be abused. All right, and this is to say whatever the district was, you have to leave it there. You know, you can't change it after the fact. So, all right, so let's go on. The next part: to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. That's pretty straightforward. Police arrest you, you have to be informed what the charges are. They can't just haul you off to jail. I think we talked about the Count of Monte Cristo last time, where he gets hauled off to jail, never gets accused of anything. They're just thrown in jail. You have to be notified what the accusation is. They don't have to tell you beforehand. Right? But once you're arrested and you know they start the process, you're required to be informed. They can't. That'd be fun, you know. The police come and arrest Sarah, and we're going to have a trial next month, and she just shows up. What should I prepare to defend myself against? She's thinking, was it this criminal activity or this one? Or this? They have to tell, you know, they have to let you know ahead of time what you're being tried for. Again, that would seem like, well, that's just fair and obvious, and it is. But we're talking about government. Right? You know, the obvious often misses them, and the fair often misses them. So. I'm sorry, did you guys hear about I haven't heard the end of it, but the typical American couple that got radicalized and was unconnected with any ISIS group in San Bernardino. They had, I think it was $25,000 deposited in their savings account about a month ago that he withdrew in cash. Yeah, that's all I've heard, which looks very, very suspicious about where did the money come from. I mean, it looks like somebody outside of the family is giving money to him to pay for this. So anyway, that storyline that Obama and his administration floated, this is just a lone group, this is no connection with radical Islam, that might fall apart very quickly. So where did that come from? They missed the obvious. All right, the next part, to be confronted with the witnesses against him. Again, this is rights that you have in any criminal prosecution. You're being accused of a crime, and you're being prosecuted for that. You have a right to be confronted with the witnesses against you. You don't get to kickbox them or something, but you have a right to face them and to hear directly from them the accusation and to question them and see if you can point out flaws in their error. It's not, you know, if Sarah's on trial and we get the other Sarah, you know, saw it, and she writes out this long testimony and signs it and just submits it to court. No, she's got to show up in court. She's got to testify. This Sarah's got to have a chance to cross-examine her or her lawyers. And she's thinking, yeah, that'll be easy. So this is called the confrontation clause. The idea that you have to be confronted with the witnesses. There can't be some secret testimony in the basement of the courthouse that's drug out and you have no option to question it. if you've ever watched any police dramas where they're trying to, there's the witness protection service where there's some witness they're trying to keep the mafia from killing, right? Because that guy's got to actually show up in court. If they kill him, then whoever's being accused can't confront the witness. He's got to actually show up in court and testify. So, all right, so the confrontation clause. Again, the point wasn't there to make it easier for the mafia to kill off witnesses. The point was to make the government give you the opportunity to question those who accuse you. And it's much, much different for Sarah to write out what she accuses this Sarah of doing than actually showing it up in court and sitting there looking at Sarah and explaining what she saw happen and allowing Sarah and her lawyers to poke holes in her statements. Right? It's a very, very different situation. That was the intent, to give you an honest and fair opportunity to confront those who are testifying against you. So, okay, so the confrontation clause. The next part, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. Is this some sort of gender bias? Are they assuming that only guys will be prosecuted criminally? Or are girls not given this right? Or is this just correct grammar? It's correct grammar. All right, have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. What does this mean? Wow, doesn't mean very much, I guess. Christina?
I think that he gets to pick witnesses.
What's that?
He gets to pick the witnesses to help him.
Yes, and more than he gets to pick them, he can force them to come and testify. Right? Sarah's on trial, and I don't know, Megan is, they happen to be together at McDonald's at the time the bank robbery took place, and Megan hates Sarah. Right? Sarah can force Megan to come and testify. That's the idea. Megan can resist, and then she goes to jail for contempt of court and other things like that. But she can force Sarah to come, or Megan to come in and testify.
Is that a wise decision? I mean, what if she's like, okay, I hate her. Yeah, she was there, and I saw her rob the bank. I mean, can they?
Well, there's that possibility. But she is under oath, and if she lies, then she's criminally liable for that. So
How do they know?
well, they might not. I mean, she could gamble that they'll never find out. But that's
So do you want someone testifying that you don't trust?
in some cases, yes. Often this person, the Megans of the world that hate their friends so much that they might not like Sarah or the criminal or the accused person, but they don't themselves want to go to jail for I just lost the word. Perjury. So they will often, they will reluctantly tell the truth. So, and I mean, like if they were at McDonald's. And Megan says, "Oh no, I never went to McDonald's that day." Then we can check her credit card statement. We can check the security cameras at McDonald's. There's ways to check to see if she's lying. So there's lots of the security camera. It can't be the witness because it's hard for you to confront the security camera other than with a baseball bat or something. But you can't confront Megan. Okay, so that they've got to bring that witness in. Okay, so anyway, there are times that you might think, I don't know if I want them, but they're kind of under the gun too, not to lie. So, okay, so you can force people to come in and testify on your behalf. Compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in your favor. And then the last one, another right that you have, to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. You have the right to a lawyer. The right to counsel clause. All that means is that the state attorney or whoever's prosecuting Sarah can't say, you know what, this is so obvious. We're not going to let you have a lawyer. And this is, why fight it? You cannot be denied your right to go get a lawyer. Okay? Does anybody know how this very simple statement has been twisted today? It was the courts in 1938 that got this one wrong. Johnson versus Zerbst, or something, Z-E-R-B-S-T.
They say that the state has to pay for your lawyer if you can't afford one?
Yes. If Sarah's poor and can't afford a lawyer, which are not cheap, the state will provide one for you, a public defender. All right? The liberals and the court decision said this phrase requires the government to provide you with a lawyer if you can't afford it. Okay. Is that what the phrase says? Well, that's what it says. Hopefully you're joking. It just says you can go get one. Okay. Let me ask the question differently. This says you have the right to a lawyer, and if you can't afford one, the government should provide it for you. The Second Amendment says you have the right to a firearm on par with the military-grade weapons. What if you can't afford one? And really, if it's true that the government should provide this one here, the government should also. Wow, that would be fun. I've never heard anyone argue that point, but I think it points out the absurdity in the liberal argument here. This does not say the government should provide you a lawyer. This is just saying you can go get one if you want to. Okay? I really don't think the government should provide us firearms. It would be fun. What was I going to say here? Oh, okay, so what I'm saying is just saying you have the right to go get one if you want. That's all. Can anybody think of a little bit of a problem with the entity that is trying to prosecute you and put you in jail, providing you a lawyer to defend yourself? I mean, there are, the public defenders, they are very independent from the prosecution, but they're getting paid by the government, the same group that's trying to put you in jail. So, now, it does provide you an opportunity. If you got a really lousy public defender, that can be grounds for appeal. You can say, oh, the government gave me a bad lawyer, so I need to get a retrial. So maybe you should take this public defender. But anyway, that is not what is required. All this thing says is that you can go get one if you want it. You can't be denied that. Okay? Should we be shocked by this point that the courts get these very obvious things wrong? And it's part of our culture. I mean, it's burned into us. You have a right to an attorney, and if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you, whatever the phrase is we hear in those police dramas. That's a creation of the courts. It's not in the Constitution. All right, questions about that? Not at all. All right. 7. We get several quick ones here. Suits in common law. Right, that means, who am I pick on now? Devante goes after Amanda for, she stepped in her cell phone and broke it. I don't know. She did something to you. That would be a common law suit. Suing somebody is what we're talking about here. Suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20. But at that point, it was not such a trivial amount, but there was an actual dollar amount here. So what it's saying is any suit that's of any significant portion, the amount, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. And no fact tried by jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court in the United States than according to the rules of common law. So what it says here, if you bring this lawsuit against her, she damaged that, how much are iPhone 6s? 700, 800?
6, 7.
All right, your new iPhone 6. She steps on it and snaps the case in half. It's supposed to be really strong, whatever. Breaks it in half. You bring a lawsuit against her. She can say, I want a jury trial to decide this thing. You can waive it and just go before a judge and not worry about it. Some of the problem with demanding the jury trial is that the loser has to pay for the jury trial. Which you might win, and then he's got to pay. So anyway, it does preserve that. It's just for a suit. You sue somebody else for damages. The person that's being sued does have this right, if they wish to evoke it, to be tried before a jury. So. All right, so let's go on. Number 8, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Okay, this is another one that doesn't specify the level of government, just excessive bail. Jacob was picked up for stealing bananas, a jewel. All right, throw him in jail and, $10 million bond, to get out. That'd be excessive. All right, nothing excessive. Excessive fines. Okay, so we're not going to imprison you. We're going to fine you $1 million for stealing bananas. All right, excessive. And then cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. This is aimed at torture and medieval type things. We're going to put you on the rack, or what, it's aimed at torture. Some people argue this excludes capital punishment. It does not, but just cruel and unusual punishment. Think medieval torture. That's what it's there to prevent at any level, not just national. All right, so that's 8. Number 9, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Okay, if you remember back to American history, all right, we talked about the Bill of Rights being added to the Constitution and the argument against it. There were some people that didn't want a Bill of Rights. They thought it was dangerous. Actually, Story addresses it a little bit. Does anybody remember the... All right, my fanciful thinking you might remember other classes.
As far as how the Bill of Rights came to be?
Why it was a little bit dangerous to put a listing of rights in the Constitution.
Because then anything not addressed.
Yeah, anything not on the list then is brought up as, well, can the government infringe upon these things? Okay, and this is kind of there to address that. It says the enumeration, this listing, doesn't deny or disparage other things. Right? There's nothing here about, we have the right to choose the school our children go to or something. No. This is saying that those rights are not infringed upon because it didn't make it into the list. So it was to address that resistance to it initially. So, all right, then number 10. The powers not delegated by the United States, or to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. What this is saying is anything not explicitly given to the national level of government is left to the states or the people. Okay. There's that phrase in the middle, there are some things that the states are barred from doing. Obviously, those aren't included. But whatever's not given to the national level. The phrase used here is the United States national government has a list of delegated powers. It's a list. And the states and the people have reserved powers. Everything else that's left is reserved to them. So delegated powers here given to the national level government. And anything not making that list is left to the states. That would revolutionize our system of government, to go back to that. So. Okay, questions about the Bill of Rights? All we have is all the rest of them to talk about. So.
What is number 9 again?
It says that means that anything that didn't make it into the list isn't somehow less important, basically. All right, we're not going to go into detail on all of the other amendments. Some of them we've hit as we went through the Constitution. There are a couple of them that are extremely important, so I want to make sure we get to those, but we'll go through here. Number 11, it talks about the judicial power of the United States, and it really is one of those legal mumbo-jumbo, well, what's the phrase? Jargon and gobbledygook. I don't know, there's a section in my English book. Jargon. It's jargon and gobbledygook. It deals with suits brought against the states, and so it's a legal clarification, really, of the powers given to the national level of government, and that's sufficient for me, unless you really want to do some research on your own. So, anybody going to be bored tonight? Dive deeper in. So, okay. Let me give you something to do. I have some guns to clean. Do something useful. All right, number 12. Number 12. This is the one that adjusted the way the president was elected. Remember, initially, the electors chose 2 people for president, and the top guy became president, and then the second place guy became vice president. This splits it up, so they vote for president and vice president separately. And you might think, why in the world does it take all of that? Partly we're talking about the government. If you ever want to find the most inefficient way to do something, look at the way the government does it. That's part of it. But more, it has to describe how that voting all takes place. Instead of there being 2 votes for president, and if you remember the phraseology, if there be 2 people that have more than a majority of the number of electors, and all of that makes no sense now. Right? So all of that wording has to be recorrected. So it's going through describing how they vote, how they decide who wins, if there's a tie. So it has to fix all that. So that's why it's so long going through those details. The voting obviously changes. The main process, if there's a tie and it going to the House and the Senate, all of those main pieces are still the same. So. That's another one after you finish researching the 11th Amendment. Dustin, you can read through that one too. All right, number 13. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Okay, so this banned slavery. Now we have a constitutional amendment getting rid of slavery. This comes along in 1865. Can someone tell me what's going on in America?
Civil War.
End of the Civil War, okay? Some of the southern states, as they start coming back into the Union, the Northerners in Congress, they played a little bit hard-nosed with this. They required that they ratify this amendment if they're going to come back into the Union. If you remember, the ratification, you need 3/4 of the states to do it. So they kind of stacked the deck in their favor, saying you can't come back in unless you ratify this amendment. So, but anyway, it does make it in. It's December the 6th, 1865. Slavery. Gone. Maybe I should point out the second section of that. We see this starting to creep up here, phrases like this. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Right here it specifies who's responsible to make sure this is followed out. It doesn't say the president, it doesn't say the states, it gives it to Congress. So we'll see phrases like that here and there throughout the rest of these. Okay, number 14. This one is one we want to spend a little bit of time on. This one comes in 1868. It's one of those amendments in the Reconstruction era, and it has some unfortunate things in it. So, or some of the things in it have been twisted and abused, I guess we should say. So, let's start with Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Okay, yeah.
This is 14? 16. I didn't hear what you said.
14.
14.
I'm looking at them.
We don't
Trying to
much of us don't have past 12, so I can't.
Oh, yeah. It's a shame. I'll share. Anybody want this one? Should pass it back. I do want it back, but I have them in my notes as well. I'll have to remember that next time. Or maybe we should just stop at number 12. Mm-hmm. Oh, we can't do that. We missed number 14. So, all right. Here we have for the first time a definition of the Constitution of what it means to be a citizen. Before this point, if a state accepted you as a citizen, then you were a citizen. It was, there was no national criteria for being a citizen. It was up to the states. This was aimed at the southern states not letting the freed slaves be citizens. This was made it clear. If you're born here or naturalized and are subject to the laws of America, then you're a citizen. Okay? This really sets up two criteria. Right? One is born or naturalized, and the other is subject to the jurisdiction. Right? Both of those have to be true. Subject to the jurisdiction means you're living underneath the laws of America. Right? Often people just take that first part and say, oh, anyone born here is a citizen. That really, if someone comes in illegally and is born here, their parents come in illegally, and they're born here, then I think you have a very strong case to argue that they're really not subject to the laws of America. They entered the country illegally. They were not, admitted according to the laws of our country. So I think there's some. It's not very popular. It'd be fun to see someone argue this, but I think it's there. And other people, if you know Phyllis Schlafly, you know that name? Very conservative lady. She was a Schlafly reporter. She's an old dinosaur from the 70s, but a very conservative. She argues this point that no, this amendment does not require that everybody who was born on American soil, regardless of how they got here, that they be a citizen. It says they have to be born here and subject to our laws. And by the very basic definition of entering illegally, you're not subject to the laws. You're flouting the laws. So, all right. So we have that definition. Two parts: born or naturalized, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. All right, so that has been misused today a lot, especially that jurisdiction part of it. Misused, and abused. All right, let's continue on with section 1. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. Okay, so we have a definition of what a citizen is here, and it says that states can't abridge their freedoms and their immunities and privileges. So, again, all of these were aimed at the way the southern states were treating the blacks, the freed slaves. That's what it's aimed at. It goes on, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Okay, so we saw that due process before. Okay, now we have that phrase here applied to the states. And we should, I made reference to this before, but I want to make sure I give you the terminology here. Due process, does anybody remember what that means? Please, somebody be awake.
Is that like the way it's supposed to be done?
Yeah, you just have to follow whatever the process is. You have to follow. We talked about you get arrested and there's a empowered use spin wheel of different crimes on it. You get to spin it to see what you did. Whatever the process is. Hopefully, it's not something that trivial. All right, the courts have morphed this due process. What he just described is called. Just lost the phrase. Procedural due process. Liberals have split this up and have added another idea to it that's called substantive due process. And what this says is that the process itself has to include certain things. Okay, which is not the idea of due process. Right? It's just whatever the process is, it has to be followed. Liberals have argued, and the courts have begun to accept this idea of substantive due process. You get arrested and you spin the spin wheel, as the laws in your state say. You can say, oh wait, this is a violation of due process. Substantive due process. Okay? So again, I'm not arguing that spinning the spin will be fair or a good way to do it, but that due process does not mean that. Right? It just means follow the process. Looks like you have a question.
I was just going to ask again what substantive...
It means that there are certain things that have to be included in the process. Okay? There has to be some substance in the process is the way to think of it. We'll leave there. So anyway, substantive due process, that is a flawed view of due process, but the general idea of process itself is fine. Okay, and then the last part of this section, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Nor deny within its jurisdiction the equal protection of its laws. I mentioned when we went through the Bill of Rights that the courts have said that states have to follow all kinds of different pieces of it. Like the First Amendment that says Congress can't do things. The states have been forced to follow it. The term is incorporated to the states. The part of the Constitution that they use to argue this is the second half of this section, where it talks about the due process or equal protection. Those are the phrases they look and say, oh, if some state picks a state religion, then they would be denying to people within their state the equal protection of the laws. Okay, which, I'm not saying that wasn't the intent, it wasn't to flavor this, it wasn't any of that. It was way into the 1900s before the liberal courts began to pull this out and bludgeon the states into submission. So this is the part they look at that forces the states to follow all of those things in the Bill of Rights that really there's no requirement for them to follow. So, all right, questions on that? We're going to skip the rest of that amendment. I'm going to just kind of look at what's there but not really talk about it. Section 2 talks about representation. If a state doesn't let a certain number of people vote, then their representation is taken away in Congress. The next part talks about people who, anybody who had pledged loyalty to America and then fought for the South, they couldn't hold office. So there's some things like that. The next part, wipes out the debts of the Confederacy. We're going to pay our debts back, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt incurred in insurrection or rebellion. So there's some things like in there that really don't have a whole lot of bearing or weight today. All right. 14. 15, short and sweet. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state. All right, so the national level as well as the states on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. They can't say, oh, you used to be a slave, so we're not going to let you vote in our state. They can't say you're black, so you can't vote in our state, or you're yellow, or you're green, or whatever color comes up, or race. All right, so none of that can be criteria. You can't be denied voting privileges based upon those things. So it is extremely infuriating and insulting, hopefully, to everybody, and especially Shem and Devante. Liberals today that claim that this gender identity stuff should be classified in the same category, and being gay in the same category should be protected the same way. When you hear them talk about the next civil rights movement, they're saying that a boy that claims he's a girl is just like being black. And then, hopefully can see some differences there. You know, that's a boy deciding to be a girl. He's not born that way. He's got a mental problem. You know, that's something he picks. You're born black. So there's a major, major difference between these two things. But anyway, that's where liberals are heading for that. In Indiana, the Democratic Party hopefully doesn't go anywhere, but they are planning on attempting to propose next year in Indiana elevating this gender identity stuff to protected class status so that it would be the same way. It would be, Devante, I made him mad. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. He asked me about this before. What was I saying? If a black kid came and applied to my school, to the academy, and I said, oh, you can't come here because you're black, that would be ugly and bad. The Democrats are wanting to make it just as legally bad for a boy that claims he's a girl that applies to our school. If I returned him away, I would be in just as much legal problem. Okay. Hopefully that strikes you as just completely insane. Okay. And don't ever start thinking, well, you know, no, it's insane. Okay. There's not an argument. It's just sick and insane. But anyway, rabbit trail. Sorry. 15th Amendment here: race, color, previous condition of servitude. All right. That was 1870. It's still in those Reconstruction era amendments. The next one, we make a jump to an even better time frame of American history, 1913. What's going on in 1913? Liberalism. It's what era do we call it?
Progressive.
The progressive era. Okay, so here we have in Amendment 16 the income tax. It was not constitutionally viable to have an income tax before. If you talk about, remember how it had to be based upon population. Each state had to contribute based on their population. This just says Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. So, income tax. Here's another example of, if you want to find an inefficient way to do something, look to the government. It would be harder. Maybe we should challenge them to come up with a more stupid way to tax people. You know, the more successful you are, the more we're going to bludgeon you. I mean, do we want to encourage people who are successful? Anyway, it hammers the people that are the most successful. So it's a part of that socialist mindset that's creeping and now jumping into America. On another side note, this does give the federal government access to a gigantic pool of money that they didn't have access to before. There were restrictions about how they taxing on imports and other things. So this opened up the doors for them to collect a massive amount of money that now they buy the states off with. They take my money and your parents' money and maybe your money, and they take it off to Washington, and they come to Chesterton and say, if you want money for your school, you're going to do these things. Well, they take it from us and then bribe our own states with it. So it gave them access to that money. So, all right, number 17, another great progressive era amendment. Here we have the direct election of senators. Prior to this, they were chosen by the state legislatures. Now they're chosen in a direct election. If you go back and look at some of the arguments why they wanted to do this, the people for this direct election said, well, there's corruption and bribery in the process. Okay. They said, well, some states, the state legislature can't decide, so they end up without a representative. Well, a stupid state. Okay. And they bring us some really very flimsy ideas. And this is passed in a big rush. This is the one that was less than a year from the time it's proposed to the time it's ratified. Passed in a big rush without people really thinking about it. Hopefully, by me bludgeoning you over the head multiple times with it through the year, you appreciate how this changes the whole structure of our government. Right? I mean, the ability of the states to be represented in Congress is now stripped away. We have here, it was an ongoing thing, but we have here definitely the states starting to get shoved under because they have no say there. Question, comment?
You could see this as a follow-up to the previous one in February, because this was passed in April. So maybe if somebody woke up and said, hey, they realized that could be a problem of them taking the money and then trying to force it back down to states, and then maybe senators were like, we don't want this to happen. Like, oh, well, I guess we'll get rid of the senators.
Yeah, well, they get rid of it. They got rid of the state government's influence on the senators. So, I don't know. I mean, they were definitely out of the same socialist push of the progressive era, definitely. So. All right, so 17, direct election of senators, very damaging one. I've thought sometime of putting on the final which amendment caused the most damage, and listing a couple of these and just having you pick one and defend your position. That caused most just make sure you write a really good essay and convince me of that. So, all right, anyway, this would definitely be very damaging. Another one that I probably put on the list is number 19. That allows you girls to vote. I'm going to talk. So, all right, number 18. After 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the et cetera, is prohibited. Prohibition. Couldn't make it, transport it, or sell it. Man.
Same thing about drinking it.
Yeah, if you can somehow get it without making it or transport it or buying it, then you can drink it. So, I missed that. It was probably better. All right, so this sets up prohibition, ushers in the era of big crime, or maybe provides for them another avenue to make lots of money. Capitalism. So, a lot of the big time gangsters, they were bringing booze in. They were involved in prostitution and all kinds of other things, but they were bringing booze into the country. So, I once heard somebody say that NASCAR originated with cars developed for bootleggers to outrun the police, and once it wasn't illegal to carry booze anymore, they started racing. I have no idea. Was that you that told me that? I've never looked into it, but it
is true.
It fits with the culture of NASCAR as well. All right, so we have prohibition. That one gets repealed. In number 21, the 18th article is hereby repealed. You can again make, transport, and sell booze. All right, 19 lets you women vote. 1920, women's suffrage, or a more appropriate term, who remembers?
Men's suffrage.
Men's suffrage, much more appropriate term. You would have your chance to argue against it on the final if I put it there. Maybe have which one was the worst and which one was the best. And you can argue this was the best because it provided emotion and irrationality to the voting process. Instability. There's lots of things there. I mean, going back to the ancient Sumerians, they recognized that women weren't stable. So. I'm not joking. The number for women was 2. And the number for men was 3 because 3 had a balance point. And women were 2. So there's no balance. Unstable? I won't argue with you. All right, Amendment 20. Please, very carefully edit this. All right, this number 20 changes the term of the president to start in January. It was in March before, moves it back to January. Congress starts January 3rd, president takes his office on the 20th. So just move those back. It does also cover some details that I really hope never comes up. If you look in section 3, if at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the president-elect shall have died, or if he's not been chosen, if there's still an election debacle and we can't figure out who won, then it gives us some clarification about what to happen. Bush would have won if it had gotten to this point. Right? So whatever, the liberals say, oh, he cheated, what? He would have won. There's no way around it. He would have won if we followed this process. But anyway, so it does provide some details for those extreme cases that really I hope never come up. All right, now 21 we covered. 22, this is 1951. This restricts the president to 2 terms. Yep.
What was it previously?
There was no restriction.
No restriction?
No restriction. There was just a precedent from Washington to do 2 terms. 23 deals with the District of Columbia. They're not part of any state. Excuse me. So it allows them to participate in the presidential election process. All right, the second part there says a number of electors of president and vice president equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which it would be entitled if they were a state, etc. So they get to participate in the vote for president. Really, if you lived in the District of Columbia, D.C., you didn't get to vote for president because you lived there. I see this more as a way for liberals to ensure 3 votes for the Democratic candidate because the city is extremely liberal. Oh, it's horrid. Horrid. All right, number 25. Here we have poll taxes being made illegal. Can't be denied. Shall be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state by reason of failure to pay poll tax or any other tax. I think it really begs the question, I mean, is that unfair to pay a tax? I mean, I have to pay a fee to get my license renewed. And there's fees for everything. An election is extremely expensive. Okay? Extremely expensive. So anyway, it was made unconstitutional. But I would not have a problem at all with a $50 fee to go vote. Think of how much more difficult it would be for the liberals to cheat. And if you're saying, oh, I don't know if it's that important to me, then I don't want you to vote. I mean, if it's if $50 keeps you from voting, then it's not very important to you. So, but anyway, it is banned by the Constitution here. But I would not be against.
You buy a lot of ramen with $50.
A lot of what?
Ramen.
Ramen.
You're in college.
Oh, well, that's a semester's worth of food. I'm not voting. Yes.
I think if you're on EBT cards, or if you're on welfare, I think you should lose your right to vote.
I agree with that. Actually, I think if you're getting money from the government, you shouldn't be able to vote. Of whatever sorts. Now, it would include people on retirement because they paid into that. But yeah, I mean, you have what's the...
You can literally classify it as bribery.
It's bribery or a conflict of interest. You're going to vote for the people that are giving you more money to give more of your neighbor's money to you. And that's so. And the politicians bribe you. I'll give you more money if you vote for me. So I would agree with that completely. So. If we bring back a poll tax, would we allow people to pay with their EBT card? Only if they'd have to eat their ballot. So, cashback. All right, 25. We're almost there. 3 more. 25 sets up a process for what happens if the president dies or resigns. We already looked at this briefly. The first thing there says the president or the vice president becomes the president. the Constitution, it said something like, shall assume the office and duties of the president, but it's unclear if he actually becomes a president or he's just kind of fill-in. This makes it clear if the president dies or quits, the vice president is the president. Okay, so that's clarified. And then the rest of it deals with technicalities of situations like if the president goes insane. What do we do? How do we get rid of him? Who's the one that is going to decide if he's insane? Does Congress get to do this? Do the courts have to, it sets up a process for that type, or if the president, I think we used this before, if he's walking out of the White House and Michelle bumps him and he falls over and bangs his head and is unconscious. He's not dead, he's unconscious. He can't resign. How do we somehow come up with a process for him to not become the president anymore and even someone less qualified to step into his position? How do we do that? So it sets up a process like that. It involves the cabinet positions, the executive officers there. They would make that decision. But it sets up a process. It's never been used. I hope it's never used. But it is good if we had that kind of crisis to have a process in place. We don't want at that point to have this big argument about, well, what do we do? No, there's a process in place to handle that type of situation. And I'm not so much concerned about the details. Again, Dustin, after he reads the other two, you can dive into this one. All right, number 26. You get to vote when you're 18. Woohoo! Did everybody make it? Shem is the only outcast in the room. Go to Chicago. You can still vote. So anyway, at 18, you get to vote. You can't be denied on that. Does anybody know the argument here for this one? It actually has a little bit of merit, I think.
If you're old enough to enlist or be drafted.
Yeah, you're old enough to be drafted and fight and die. Probably should at least let you vote. I could see that. All right. Our church hasn't followed suit here. We'll let you guys work and participate in the ministries, but you still can't vote. All right, number 27. No law varying the compensation for services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. Okay. This is the one that we, I think, mentioned earlier. This was proposed with the Bill of Rights and never got ratified. And it wasn't until 92 that this gets ratified.
And what did it say again? No law can take effect until...
If the senators and congressmen give themselves a raise, it doesn't go into effect until after the next election. It gives the people of the country to get mad at them and throw them out. Not that we especially need reasons for that right now, but it does give us that option. So.